What's up guys, it's USA Specialist, and about 2 years later, Battlefield 2042 is finally great, but at this point, no one seems to care.
Soldiers with no country left to fight
for. The U.S. and Russia are both being accused of fielding armed no-pats in an escalating fight over vital resources.
With a release date all the way back in fall of 2021, Battlefield 2042 is coming up on its 2-year birthday. And after all this time, DICE and EA have fixed the game, but they were never able to save the game. We're 5 seasons of content into another week live service from DICE, and while many Battlefield fans can appreciate the hard work DICE has put into fixing the game, at this point there's not much reason to care. And while I'm going to use the word great throughout this video, understand I'm saying so in a retrospective sense. Battlefield 2042 is still a deeply flawed game, and EA only stuck with it so they could tell investors that on paper, they did right by the fans and fixed the game. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, throughout this video, there's a few main things I want to talk about. First, the paradox of how it's only after the game got much better that fans lost interest. Second, the lack of care and creativity that DICE has put into the game. Third, how EA and DICE can only manage the bare minimum when it comes to game development nowadays. And finally, why these things may be happening, and why I hope they're actually a good thing. But first, a few disclaimers. For those of you who are new here, I've been creating content since Battlefield 5, as I've always been a hardcore Battlefield fan, and this was my way of really getting involved in the community. I grew up during the Battlefield 3 era, and have played every title to date, with a real appreciation for the mechanics of Battlefield 3, and the craft and storytelling of Battlefield 1. As someone who currently holds a fine art degree and works as a senior designer and art director in New York, dissecting and critiquing my favorite gaming franchise has been my way of adding to this beautiful community. A lot of what I'll say during this video will be rather harsh, but that's because I'm speaking about a nearly 1,000 person studio with oversight from a multi-billion-dollar publisher who makes products for a global audience. DICE and Battlefield are legends within the gaming community, and they should be held to a high standard. I appreciate all the work the team has put in, but recently they've made mistakes, acted immature, and simply come up short when executing on ideas, content, or products that earn them millions in revenue. And whether those flaws come from within the confines of the studio itself or their EA management, Battlefield 2042 has become the next step in a dying brand, even though the current state of the game is rather good. A brand that has seen the highest of highs and the lowest of lows in gaming, and now sadly waits in limbo as fans are neither happy nor angry, they're just indifferent. Battlefield 2042 has been revived on paper, and has had some amazing moments over the past 2 years, but even after all that work, the franchise has become a non-factor. So hit subscribe and let's jump into why Battlefield 2042 is finally great, but no one seems to care. It's really amazing to think how far Battlefield 2042 has come since 2021. What started as a totally bare bones, terribly designed, incredibly buggy mess is now a much prettier, a little more complete, and much more stable experience almost 700 days later. A journey that has seen the death of Battlefield's second attempt at a battle royale, their total mishandling of a potentially fan-favorite mode in Portal, and the removal of the franchise's traditional single-player campaign. The devs had to drop almost every ounce of creativity, cut back massively on content, and restructure their entire company from the ground up in order to make it happen, but today, Battlefield is a much more stable and rather satisfying shooter, especially if you're a new player getting in late or jumping in via Game Pass. The devs have managed to rework every map from the vanilla game, add one new map per season, maintain a rather fair battle pass structure, feed us paid cosmetics on a weekly basis, and have crafted a pretty compelling gameplay loop involving decent gunplay. In many ways, this has answered the fans' criticism. The game works, there's new content, regular seasons, progression via a battle pass, limited time events, and so on. It checks every box on paper, but just as it entered year 2, the community as a whole seemed to pack up and move on. And I think that happened for 2 reasons. First off, people enjoyed watching the train wreck unfold. Logging on every week to see what DICE could have possibly done to make the game better was half the fun. Every week was like a holiday, getting fans excited for a new update to their full-priced beta. That energy is now gone. The game hasn't changed in a meaningful way in many months, and that leads me onto my second point. This is it. Battlefield 2042 is done. There's probably going to be some new guns and some more maps, but Battlefield 2042 as a game, as an experience, is set in stone aside from the bare bones live service, which will last at least a few more months. At this point, the devs are moving on to the next title, and 2042 is being held together by a skeleton crew that doesn't seem like they want to be there. DICE already killed Portal and Hazard Zone, they never made a campaign, they barely tried with their events, and there's no third mode or free-to-play expansion that's going to change the experience. The players came, they saw, they conquered, and now they're moving on. DICE is now satisfied with themselves after lowering the bar so much that they couldn't possibly mess it up. And after years of formulaic live service with no meaningful changes coming in the future, we believe we've seen this game come full circle. DICE has been supporting a bare-bones multiplayer for the past 20 or so months, and most of that time has been rolling back their vision and lowering the bar just in order to make the game function. Fans are pretty certain that next season we'll again get one new map, just a few new guns, and another battle pass. At this point, fans are just saying GG and moving on, and the game seems to be sitting in a holding pattern just so EA can say they're quote-unquote committed to saving the game. After all this work, it's a shame to have so many fans pack up and move on, but in the era of live service, most players are looking for a game that actually feels alive with a thriving community. Battlefield 2042 feels rather good to play, but most FPS fans will never experience just how far this game has come. For me, the saddest part of Battlefield 2042 is that it never got to live up to its full potential. It fell apart so quick that all the time and talent the devs had went into fixing the game and getting it into a playable state. The world, story, and gameplay of Battlefield 2042 and its sandbox are so ready for something like a great campaign, a free-to-play extraction mode, or even a ranked system. The game and its engine seem to have all the ingredients, with MOBA-style characters with unique personalities, the ability to create complex and large maps, and a rather well-balanced and well-focused set of weapons and vehicles, all of which was built on top of a constantly updating live service platform. Not to mention how Battlefield 2042 nailed the look of a near-future conflict. Battlefield 2042 is right up there as one of the best-looking art directions of any game ever. The box art, concept designs, and reveal trailer are all impeccable. It's a shame we didn't get more of that with something like a campaign, and it's a shame that more players didn't get to experience it because the game fell apart so quickly that most fans just returned to something like Call of Duty for a more reliable experience. And while a lot of this is a tragedy, I'm frustrated that DICE has continued to show they don't have what it will take to survive in this era of gaming. In an effort to save time, money, and resources while focusing on fixing the base game, DICE has dropped all of its creativity and has created a cookie-cutter shooter experience where it seems creativity or trying new things is frowned upon. With Battlefield 2042 already being dead in the water, I was hoping we'd get some Hail Mary, like a new third mode, a battle royale, or No Man's Sky update. But instead, the game reached an average state, and EA decided that was good enough, and that's what brings me on to my third point. After all this time, this third point is the main reason I made this video. Back when DICE began to fix the game in early 2022, the dev team said that they had a new mantra of quality over quantity. Something that sounded funny being that the game was neither of those things at launch. Battlefield 2042 was starved of content on release, and none of it worked. But the team did set to work releasing meaningful updates that fixed the game month over month, and eventually built into seasonality with the release of 0 Hour. The game has come a long way, fixing hundreds of game-breaking bugs, stabilizing performance, and gathering back an audience that's still interested in the all-out war experience Battlefield has always offered. However, looking back on it now and understanding the resources DICE and EA should have at their disposal, this mantra of quality over quantity now feels like a cop-out. At this point, DICE has killed off the traditional campaign, killed off Hazard Zone, essentially given up on Portal, and now they're setting the bar so low they can't mess it up. They started marketing things like remastered vanilla maps as new content, and brought back guns we had in prior games, just with way fewer options. DICE has purposefully reset expectations to such a low point that simply getting the game working was praised and seen as meaningful content. But 2 years and 5 seasons in, DICE continues to ignore massive bugs like mouse input and aim assist, and has made the game so formulaic that fans are leaving because it's just a cookie-cutter production with way less content than prior titles. They lowered their content output, cut important modes, ignored game-breaking issues, and set up production to be as cookie-cutter as possible, all while patting themselves on the back. Take a look at the Archangel Directive, a quote-unquote live service event that does feature a great new mode, but doesn't even feature a single earnable full-body cosmetic for any specialist. It only has one paid bundle across its 2 weeks. The team over at DICE can't even be bothered to create paid content anymore, and it's a damn shame. I understand Battlefield 2042 isn't really worth EA's time, as it's already a failed project. But I would have loved to see some of the DICE devs just be let loose to turn this game into a community test environment, so the game could have at least died for something. But again, that's been too big of an ask, and Battlefield 2042 never got a hero's revival like Battlefield 4, No Man's Sky, or Destiny 2. Now, I believe the reason why Battlefield 2042 is in such a bare-bones state is obvious. After the past 2 years of shakeups, firings, hirings, coming back into the office, creating a new studio, and hopefully learning from 2042's failures, it's time to move on. I'd imagine both the devs and EA are ready to put Battlefield 2042 behind them and create something new with an all-new team. I hope that Battlefield 2042 has been left to die because all the talent and resources are busy creating an incredible new game. But letting 2042 rot and having Battlefield 5 lose support early has done massive damage to this franchise, and I know many of my friends who grew up on Battlefield are looking to never buy this franchise again. Battlefield 2042 has come a very long way, and is a fun game with a good deal of unique advantages, but I don't want to see the bar continue to be set this low, where a bare-bones multiplayer, no campaign, and a buggy game engine is deemed acceptable from such a talented and well-funded studio. After 2 increasingly bad titles, the next Battlefield could be their third strike, and in the words of Enders, there's no more excuses for the next Battlefield game. The global pandemic is over, you hired the dream team, you fired and replaced people, you got all the feedback you need and more. If the next Battlefield game sucks, then shut down the studio and sell the IP. But guys, drop those comments below and tell me if you're still playing Battlefield 2042. For everything else Battlefield, stay tuned and subscribe, and as always, thank you guys for watching.